Hello, hello, everybody. It is Heather and Deb. And this is episode 28 of Reluctantly Woo-Woo. I can't talk today.
Ooh.
I don't know. I'm sure I told you this, but I have a speech impediment. When I was a kid, I had a speech impediment, and it was R's. And my sister's name was Renee. And the other kid in speech class with me, his name was Ronnie. And now as I'm saying this, my tongue gets all tied because I have, if I start talking too fast, my R's get all crazy. And so I'm surprised that so far I have not messed up reluctantly woo-woo, which now I have to say really slow because I'm thinking about it. But it gets really challenging for me.
You should be offended that we named our podcast something hard for you to pronounce.
I know, I should have. So why would it offensive? Why would you even do that? Why would we do that? Why would I do that to myself? It's so offensive.
Because you're clearly a real big asshole.
Yeah. So that is leading us into what we're going to be talking about today. So that we are called Reluctantly Woo-Woo because we talk about things that we have been reluctant to talk about or admit that we're into, because the woo-woo world is things of the alternative world, not I say traditional or conventional. I think it's more conventional because these things actually are more traditional,
sure.
Than not. But that seem a little bit out there, right? Because they're not things that we've been brought up believing, and we see that they work, but it's kind of oh man, I don't always want to admit it. And it's so contrary to what we're brought up believing. So that's why we call it Reluctantly Woo-Woo. And so we talk about things that are on the woo-woo, but we also talk about things that are on the practical. One of my good friends, Leah, she talks about the woo and the do, right? So it's the practical and the magical, all those things. And today we're going to talk about being offended, because why not? Everybody's offended.
It's a hot topic right now.
Hot topic, right? And so, and it's something that I'm going to let you talk about or lead into the conversation, because this is something that has been really come up a lot. Well, for both of us, because we've messaged back and forth, but if they triggered for you. So,
yeah, there's a lot wrapped into it. So I will just kind of lead with, this is a thinking out loud episode. I don't expect that we're going to solve a damn thing. We're going to piss some people off. We're welcome to we welcome the feedback. We may or may not choose to do anything with what you share with us. I'll just say that, because how this started is I'm part of a networking group, a kind of business development group that I am a super fan of, huge, mega impact, super valuable program that I'm part of. But as part of the conversations that we have, it's super open-minded people, but somebody brought up the idea that apparently the term woo-woo is offensive. And this is a group that really dives into all the spiritual stuff. It is deep into, we talk about tarot, we talk about the Akashic records, we talk about, it's all over the place. But someone was like, hey, I'm just curious if this group has any insight, because somebody told me that the term woo-woo is offensive. The girl that originally posted it was like, I looked on Google, I can't really find anything. Could someone explain? And a few people chimed in with why woo-woo is offensive, which initially my reaction was oh crap, do we have to change the name of our podcast? Which I brought it to you and you were like, no, not going to do that. So I've been sitting on this and thinking about it for quite a while. And I guess the explanation, I still don't fully understand why woo-woo was offensive. The explanation had something to do with the lineage and heritage of a lot of spiritual practices, which I'm more than willing to acknowledge. And I'm still going to get it wrong. So, I know I'm going to get it wrong. But what I kind of took away was that there are certain things that you're not supposed to practice if they weren't passed down in your bloodline, or if you don't have ancestry there, which, again, immediately I thought, well, then how does any idea spread if it's only allowed to spread to people that are blood relatives? And in our society of there's so much that's contrary. I'm going to talk in circles and we'll fill in some gaps and stuff, but it all led to this discussion where we're going to talk about where I kind of sit with it now is sometimes you can just choose not to be offended. Yes, we should eliminate truly, everyone agrees, offensive words and language and ideas from our normal vocabulary. And I do 100% approve of society learning from the past and trying to become better. But we are taking this to such an extreme now that it creates this environment of, I'm afraid to speak. Everybody's paralyzed. Like, I certainly don't want to offend you. But at some point, I'm not, you look at the intent behind it when we've always explained every time we start an episode of this podcast, we see woo-woo as just a fun way to encapsulate all of these ideas and it's a very common term. I think.
Yeah. I listened to a video today of my coach, and she was talking about, like, if you're, using the woo-woo things. And I was like, I'm hearing people say it all the time.
Because you just know what it means. So how else do we encapsulate all of these ideas? Like, then give me a new term that isn't offensive, but I promise you somebody's going to say it's still offensive.
Right.
So that's where I just kind of want to, I don't know, like, you have the right to be offended. You also have the choice to not let it bother you. And I think we can talk about how that plays into your entire emotional well-being, because if you walk around looking for things to be offended by, sure as shit, you're going to find a whole lot of them, and you're not going to be a very happy person.
Right.
You're just not. And I don't know, if people want to tell me they can't stand me because I'm letting my gray hairs grow out, or because I'm a woman, or because I live in Phoenix and I haven't acknowledged where this land is claimed from, or whatever lines I'm crossing, I'm very, very sorry, but I can also choose not to be offended by your offense and move on with my day.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting thing, because I think, we grew up in, like, you and I, are in our 40s, I'm pushing 50-ish, a couple more years. I got a couple more years, but, like, we grew up in an age where, like, you went out and played on the streets, and, like, you didn't have to worry about, things. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have all of these things. Like, we didn't have people screaming things at us about who we are. Like, you just interacted with the world. Right. And there wasn't this whole, like if something happened. So it's like, when you look at generationally, like, our parents, were products of their parents, who are more of, like, the greatest generation, right? So you have, like, what's known as the greatest generation, and then, like, our parents are the boomers, and then, like, our generation, and then, after that, like your kids, if I had kids. And there's something that happened where it went from, like, teaching people how to have emotional resiliency, and there was this swing on that side of, like, not feeling any emotion.
Right. It was not healthy either.
Right. So, like, talking to my grandmother, I was like, what was your favorite childhood memory? And she said, she's like, what, are you writing a book? And, like, she never talked about anything that happened. She was so afraid to deal with her emotions. So there was that, right? And now the other side is, like, everything is like, oh, this is how I feel. Da, da, da. Like, the pendulum has swung the complete opposite side.
Right.
Like, everybody's talking about their feelings and how, like, it's like, this makes me feel, and I'm
great.
about that. Like, that's what I do for a living. Right?
Absolutely. But if something you do makes me feel a certain way, why is it your responsibility to manage my feelings?
Right.
It is not. It is my responsibility to manage my feelings and my reactions.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the big thing, is we live in a culture where everybody else is responsible for everybody else.
Yeah.
It's like, my doctor is responsible for my health. My accountant is responsible for my financial health. No, your finances is your responsibility. They're a person to help. The doctor, not responsible for your health. Like, you are. What you eat, what you think, what you drink, that's all on you.
Yeah.
And so when people get offended, what it's doing is totally giving their power away. Right. And saying that all of these things outside of me need to be a certain way in order for me to feel good. And until all of these things are this way, then I can't feel this way. So I'm going to run around trying to put out fires, and then I'll be able to feel that way.
Yeah.
That's exhausting.
It is. And then I don't know. I honestly, I don't have solutions, because even as we're having this conversation, I can feel myself feeling this, like, oh my God, if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, God, these people are a-holes. They're so tone deaf. They don't know what like, I can hear this commentary I'm already constructing, and that's not at all where we're going. You know what I mean? Like, it's just I don't know. I would like to where is the line between, yes, we've got to clean it up. Obviously, we aren't going to run around calling each other racial slurs. That's not okay. I am not saying just choose not to be offended by that terrible word. Yes,
Right.
we should all stop saying things like that. Yes, we should all stop discriminating against people on things that are completely outside of their control. But at some point, we're taking it very, very, very far to a point where it's just, I don't know. Where is the point where now we can just have some personal responsibility for how you're reacting to stuff? I'm going to keep talking in circles. I don't have a solution. If anybody's watching, let's hear some thoughts. But
Deb wants a solution.
yeah.
So okay, so if we look at emotional resiliency, that's somebody's ability to adapt to stressful situations or crisis. When somebody is emotionally resilient, and this is what I believe, is that if you are emotionally resilient, you do not believe that things are happening to you,
Right.
that people are doing things to you,
Right.
It is things are happening, they're doing that thing.
Right.
Once you cannot take things personally, oh my gosh, Don Miguel.
Yes, the 4 agreements. Just
right?
Nothing other people do has anything to do with you, really.
Yes. Once you can do that, then that gives you the ability to create the change that you want. So, like, what is offensive? Like, things that are super offensive, right? Is that like girls being sold in, well, children, of any gender being sold into sex slavery? Is that offensive? Holy shit, yes.
Yes.
It's like so offensive, right? And the person who typically can do more change is the one who is not so, like, they've healed their emotional wounds from that, right? And they can go forward. But if they're coming from a place of victim and the energy of victim, right, they're never going to be able to create change.
Right.
Because they believe that, oh, they did this to me. That comes from a revenge energy instead of here's a wrong in the world that needs to be righted.
Right.
Right. And I think that's like the biggest thing when it comes to not taking things offensively, is realizing, like, it's not personal. I remember, I think I probably told you this. I'm sure I've told you this story. Years ago, I went out with this guy that I had dated like maybe 2 years prior, right? We hadn't talked for about 2 years. We went out. I had too much to drink, which for me is like 2 drinks because I just don't drink. And so everything hits me really hard. And we were driving home and I was like, you got to pull over. And he pulls over and I open up the door and I puke. Right? And I pull the seat back and I'm laying back in the seat. And the next thing I remember was him being on top of me, taking my pants down. And I totally blacked out. And when he got back to my house, he dropped me off. Like, I remember crawling into bed and I remember waking up the next morning and thinking, oh my gosh, did that really happen? Like, did he really just date raped me? And like, as it started coming together, I was like, he really did. And I was talking to a friend about it and she was so pissed off about it. And she's like, I don't understand why you're not offended by this. And I was like, because it wouldn't have mattered if it was me in that seat or another girl. He would have done the same thing. That's what he did. Like, that's who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm going to talk to him about it. And when I did, he was like, well, I didn't see what was wrong with it because we had sex before. And I was like, what? Like that. And again, still, I didn't take it personally because I was like, he's messed up in the head, right? Like,
right. But you also probably didn't go out with the guy again.
No.
Right?
I did not. Not at all, right? But I just, and I understand some people are like, something's wrong with you, that like you don't have emotions, that you couldn't think that. I was like, no, I was just for some reason in that situation able to like see it objectively for what it was. He did it. Right? It's not that he did it to me. Like, yes, he did it to me. I'm the one laying there blacked out. But like, and again, I mean, there's nuances and discretion for everything, right? Yeah. So it'd be a very different story if I was wide awake and I was being beaten to death. And like, that's a whole different level of trauma, right? So everybody listening, like, we know there's nuances to all of these things. Right. But even that, like, no matter how severe the trauma, at the end of the day, it's still that person did it. Right? we happen to be at that place and we happen to be the person that experiences it. It's a suck. Yes. Is it terrible? Yes. And are there tools to be able to help remove that trauma from our body? Absolutely.
Right.
But while we're spinning in that energy of this thing that we don't like about ourselves, this thing that we feel shame about, right? That's when we get offended.
Right.
We feel shame personally. We feel something that we don't like about ourselves, and we're not look at it.
That's a good way to put it. And I think if you, I mean, yeah, I really have I don't like the taking your power back expression. I don't know why that's getting so tired to me. But that it is a good way to describe that. Like when you just own it as, okay, I'm going to choose how I react to this, it has so much less impact on you. And getting back to all the energy work and the things that we love to talk about, probably far less chance of that creating a trapped emotion for you, creating, distortions in your energy field, causing, further problems down the road because you didn't hold on to it.
Right. Yeah. And we're not saying that it's that it's easy, right? No. When you've had a very this offensive offense, right? Like we're not saying that it's easy, right? Just saying that like when you can take the time to heal it, it doesn't mean that you no longer, that you just turn a blind eye, right? But it means that then you can be in a more more empowered power. Like my words are not working today, but right, you have more power, right, to be able to heal and shift what needs to be what needs to be changed in the world.
Right. No, I think that's so good. And I mean, that's such an extreme example too, right? I mean, that's a powerful example because it's so extreme. I'm sure people, if they're listening, are like, what the hell? Like that. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the reaction is a little bit like, well, there should be some consequence for the guy, whatever, all of that, not the conversation we're having. But think about this example and you choosing to be offended if we call our podcast reluctantly woo-woo. Our intention, again, I don't know how I can relate this back to your particular example, because I was going to say, let's assume good intent. I don't know. Perhaps he thought he was doing something kind. Who knows? Well, who knows what his trauma is?
Exactly. But that, like, always assuming positive intent is a skill that definitely needs to be developed. And again, doesn't negate the person from doing what they do. A man beating his wife, right? Like, because he doesn't want her to go out, right, with anybody, right? It is a horrible thing. In his mind, though, he has a positive intention for it. He's thinking, I'm going to keep her safe. When we're like, no, crazy, that does not make any sense. When we can step into the shoes and say, what is his positive intention for this? Right? Then it helps to take away like some of that emotional charge and be like, okay, he's thinking this, right? But no, like it's not right, but at least you have a better understanding of where that person's coming from. Then it goes back to, it's not you, right? It's them.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with you. It's them. Yes, get out of the situation. Don't ever stay in a situation like that. Right. And, when we run around like they did this to me and they did this to me and they did this to me, you're constantly going to find that the world is out to get you. Yeah. But when you can be like, people are doing them because they have their own unhealed traumas and wounds, gosh, it's so freeing. Mm-hmm. So incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
And so when we find things that are like offensive, when somebody's like, if I was like, Deb, like you're just a crazy middle-aged white woman, right? Like you can be like, how dare you say that about me? Da, 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 da. Right. Or I think I know you well enough to be that you'd be like, yeah.
Those are facts. Yeah.
Right.
Brush off. I can give an example though, where I was I don't even know where I stumbled upon it, but there is an account out there somewhere that is called White Women Ruined Yoga. And I initially was like, a little bit when I saw it. And then I'm like, well, whatever. They can make fun of whoever they want. And perhaps there's a subset of white women that they truly believe ruined yoga. I suppose I fall into their subset by, looking from their, whatever their criteria, but I don't feel like I've ruined yoga, and I just
Right.
let it go.
Right.
So,
yeah. I always, I love the example from Callouts, who is a speaker and author and former Comedy Central comedian. And he talks about, if you were to say, you're a crazy, silly one-eyed purple polka dotted monster. And, some people, like, if I said that to you, you'd just be like, whatever, like, doesn't offend me, because you're like, that's not who I am. Right? The reason we get offended is because there's a part of us like that we haven't owned, and we're like, I don't like, that you see this in me, because I don't even want to see it in myself.
right.
Okay? And the sooner that we heal, and they take the time to heal our own wounds, the sooner the wounds of the world can be healed.
Right.
But we can't do it if all the time we're just running around it like, this book title offends me.
Yeah, and just the call outs of everything. I agree with you. I mean, and by no means I don't want to live in a world where people just say all the rude shit they want, but I also I don't have to take it in, I just choose not to. I mean, I can think of one example where, I actually ended up getting fired from a job because a customer called me the C word. Which I do think is a disgusting word. It's one that I'd never use. I swear like a sailor, I never say that word. I don't know. I don't even like how it feels to say it. And so I was kind of like, I mean, it's way too long of a story to tell. And, it was a little convoluted, but in the end, I'm like, okay, that was pretty offensive. And I certainly didn't take to it well. But it's a hilarious story to me now. And I mean, I know that, like, I don't like the word, but I also don't believe that does describe me. He just didn't. I mean, I was working in a bar. I mean, like, when you cut someone off from their beloved alcohol, they don't always react well to it.
Right.
That's not my problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that he who makes the most noise wins.
Right.
I don't know if wins is, I mean, that's the phrase, but I don't know if wins is the best word, but squeaky, whatever that thing is. And we're in
this is the society we are living in right now, apparently.
Right. Everybody has a voice like us. We have this voice to be on here. I mean, it's ironic, right? To be on this platform to talk about, like, people being offended. And we're not all saying we're offended that people are being offended. We're saying, wait, let's look at this. Like, what's really going on that people are so offended about everything?
Right.
And oh gosh, like, I don't know about you, but every conversation I have now, like you said, it's like, I'm walking on eggshells. Am I going to say something? That's offensive.
Well, and sometimes it gets really freaking confusing, because I will give this example again because I still don't understand it. And again, probably offend somebody because I'm even bringing it up. But I was on a call with, again, group of people who are very conscientious about this stuff. Proper use of pronouns. We're respecting everything like that. And the person leading the call said something about female-owned businesses, blah, blah, blah. It was like it wasn't even what the whole conversation was about, but she mentioned female-owned businesses. And then it came up that we need to stop saying female-owned because it's offensive and it blah, blah. I can't remember the explanation, but we need to say women-owned. And I'm like, okay, I think my head's going to explode, because I feel like last week someone told me it, like, I just honestly, like, truly not trying to be a dick. I don't understand. I can't keep up with the nuance of offense that people can find.
I'm with you. I feel
like I sound like a freaking Trump supporter saying shit like that. But honestly, like, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I don't, it, like, at some point, can we all just, if you don't like the word female, then just in your head, replace it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then again, it's always like, what is it specifically, right, that's triggering you? Because a trigger, I mean, that's another big word too, right? They're like, oh, that triggers me. Well,
trigger warnings on everything.
Right. And it's funny because I did a post the other day and I was like, trigger warning, but it was all about like trigger warning because it's talking about why people are triggered all the time. But if something is triggering you, like I love triggers, love them.
It's telling you something.
Yes. Saying, what is a part of me that I haven't accepted yet? Oh, something that I am rejecting in myself, something that I don't love about myself that needs some love and attention from me.
Right. You can't keep walking around avoiding your trauma. I mean, I guess the context of trigger warning, right, is often if you're going to talk about abuse. And so if someone's abused, they may not want to read this, right? Or you're going to talk about rape. And if someone's been raped, they may not want to read this. I mean, I understand that. I respect that. But I love your point. Like, if you can work through that trauma, then perhaps when you see those words, it won't wound you.
Yes. And that's like where the woo-woo part comes in. What I love, love, love about using the body code with people is that it allows us to work on those things without having to go into story, without having to go into all those details, which people are like, I did therapy and I talked about it over and over again. It's still there. Yes, because you haven't released it from the body. And what the body code is, it helps it to release from the body so that when you think of that incident, you're neutral.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this thing happened. Right? That's why I talk all the time about like, losing my first child, having an abortion at 20, like having a child without a brain. And people are like, how can you say that so nonchalantly? And I'm like, because I've healed, like I've done the work to heal it. Right. And I can talk about it in a way that, is helpful to other people. And I've had so many people be like, thank you for sharing that, because like how many women talk about those kind of things? They don't, but I had to heal it, because otherwise, like when I wasn't healed about it, like I was crying all the time and everything, like walking on eggshells. But have to be able to get that energy out of our body. And that's where the woo-woo part comes in, because it then helps. And then again, going back to, you can change those things from a place of empowerment. Victim.
Yeah.
And we don't need any more victims in the world. Right?
No. Right.
You experience things, and like, let's heal and grow so that we can help other people heal and grow.
Right. Right. I like it. And by no means am I saying I wish somebody didn't, share with me why a certain word could be offensive. I love those conversations. I do. And if I truly thought that there was a problem, I would certainly make a shift in my life. But there has to be a point where I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's offensive to say woo-woo. And I've heard it now, because now I hear people in my office, very everyday people saying, oh, that's woo-woo stuff or whatever. Like, it's just a term that people use casually. And I don't know if anybody else is saying, I don't know. I'm open to people giving me.
Like we forget that we have the on and off button. Like Howard Stern, like growing up, like to me that was offensive. Like I didn't like the guy. I didn't like what he talked about. So I didn't listen.
Right. I don't very much care for really vulgar rap songs that talk all about beating your women up. And I just don't listen. I'm not trying to shut it down. Make the music if you like it. Don't care. Listen to the music if you like it. I don't care. It's not the top of my list to listen to. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Heal the wounds so that you can help heal the things that really truly are offensive. Because there are truly offensive things in the world. There are horrible people saying horrible things, doing horrible things to other humans, right? But we can't help that if we're in victim mode. If we're constantly like, I'm offended that tree's branch is leaning to me instead of away. Like, how dare it? Doesn't it know that it should go the other way? Like, that's how ridiculous it's gotten. Right? Yeah. So take the time to say, what is it that really like is offensive? Like, so that I can come to a place of neutrality and then like take back my power, not to use that cliche word, but like to take that back so that we can actually help right all of the wrongs in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. The real wrongs.
Yeah. Hopefully y'all got some of that. Do you feel a little bit resolved about that?
No, I'm sitting here like, we just opened a can of worms. Yeah. But I have grown some thick skin in my recent years. So You know, whatever. I hope nobody is offended, but if they are, call us. Let us talk to you about how we can help.
I will say that, okay, so I know we're wrapping up, but I think about when I had my bakery, it was a gluten-free, allergen-friendly bakery. We use the term vegan because there were no animal products in it. My intention for that bakery was never for it to be a vegan bakery, like an ethical vegan bakery, right? It was an allergen-friendly bakery for people who had food allergies, gluten intolerances, couldn't do dairy or eggs or that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
In Philly, there's a huge vegan community. So of course they loved our stuff because our stuff was great, right? Well, one time we were going to an event at the Philadelphia Zoo for an autism awareness event. There's a huge autism awareness society in the Philly area. Well, it's a gluten-free, allergen-friendly bakery. Why wouldn't we be a part of this?
Mm-hmm.
Amount of people that came out, Deb, on my Facebook page. I put on Wednesday, like afternoon. I remember exactly standing where I was, like, and I was like, hey, join us at the zoo on, on Saturday, da da da. For the next 4 days, I got zero sleep because all of these like people who are ethical vegans, and those are people who choose to be vegan for ethical reasons versus, health reasons, etc. How dare you go to the zoo? Da, da, da. And I was like, listen, like, this is what our bakery is about. This is why we're there, right? And they were just saying the meanest things on our Facebook page. And it's my business Facebook page. So I have every right to block them. Well, some would come on, but I would always say to them, I would say, I would love to have a conversation with you in person, about this. Let's schedule a time to do that. And then they just keep going on. And so then I would block them. And then their friends would come on and be like, you're so immature, you're blocking. I'm like, no, I've actually asked them to let's sit down and have a conversation. I had one person, actually, she just came in and like wanted to talk. And I'm like, do you understand how businesses work? Like, I can't drop everything just to
right.
Conversation, right? But one person, no one actually wanted to have an adult face-to-face conversation. Well, I was like, let's be open to this, but my business is about this. You want it to be about this, but this is what it's like, this is what it's about, and you're getting offended. I can't help you with that.
Right.
Your intention for my business and my intention are very different.
Right.
But people don't want to have the conversations. And
right.
that's half of the problem in our world is people are not willing to sit face to face and say, let me understand where you're coming from. What is your positive intention?
Yes. Right? And also that, the vegan lifestyle is great for a lot of people. It's not great for all people. And this is a whole different conversation if we get on the you should be just like me bandwagon.
Right.
Your righteous intentions are fabulous and that's great, but let other people live their lives. I don't know. Again, that's gray area too, because we have laws and we have order for a reason, because there are morals that we all need to uphold to live in a society that functions well. But there are some that are simply choices, and we all have those choices, and you don't need to convert everybody to your way of thinking. I honestly don't care if anybody doesn't want to practice the things that we talk about. Totally cool. If you don't believe in any of our woo-woo stuff, I'm not going to shove it down your throat. I'm not.
You have the ability to turn off the clicker, but if you really are so bothered, then say to the person, hey, I would love to sit down with you and to understand, right? Instead of, no, I'm blocking them. No, I'm unfollowing them. I don't like their politics. I don't like their religion. I don't like this. And you do you do have the opportunity to manage your energy and what you see, right? And let's at the same time, be respectable adults. And if somebody is my best friend, who's been my best friend for 20 years, and they say that they're supporting somebody that I don't support, then me be like, I'm writing you off, right? That's not having any kind of emotional resiliency. How about what David said? Wait, I can't imagine how people date these days, because people are going to go off on the stupidest things. And I'm sure I'm going to get flack for this. Yes, David, you were totally right. Dating in this day and age.
This is why I've just resolved to be single forever.
Whole other conversation. I'm super grateful.
David, you're right. We don't date at all.
I am super grateful. I'm like, gosh, I'm really glad that I found my boyfriend right before, and at least we're on the same page as stuff. Because I'm like, oh, how do you there's so many other things, but it is, everybody gets offensive, but let's just put our big girl boys big girl and boy panties, and I'm not even supposed to use those words anymore, but let's put our undergarments.
Wait, what are we allowed to call them?
I don't even know. I don't even know.
Are we even allowed to talk about undergarments? We probably aren't allowed. We must acknowledge that anybody has genitals.
But you can't say under because then that's offensive to the top garments. Like,
exactly.
yeah, this is pretty much where we are.
I'm just gonna.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't need to go off on it. I will stop on that because there's so many things that I'm like, none of this stuff makes sense, and there's so many contradictions in it.
There are so many. That's where I'm struggling too. There are so many contradictions. Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap up there. There's lots of contradictions, right? Take the time if you're feeling truly offended by something, saying what is going on in me, what's the wound that needs to be healed, right? Like there's mental mental work that you can do, conscious level work, and if there's something that no matter how much you keep trying to change your thinking, maybe there is some energetic work that needs to be shifted and changed, whether it's doing Akashic record reading, whether it is doing a past life regression, or going and seeing a shaman and doing some plant medicine, or doing some body code work with us. Like there's things to do so that you can be in a state of peace where you're not offended, so that you can be more powerful in the world.
Right. Yes.
We will leave it at that. And
we will. I have to go pick up my daughter anyway. I hope we get some lovely feedback.
Yes. I'll let you field all of it. Everybody, we will talk to you later.
Bye.